Hi, everybody. A guy with a scarf, late evening version. I'm happy to be with Paul Boustead from San Francisco and from Dolby Up to You. Hi, Paul.
Hi, Carlo. Nice to talk to you.
So why are we talking? Because I was in London at your event in Soho Square, beautiful location, great experience in the Dolby Atmos Vision Theater. And I went back to think about latency, low latency, ultra low latency. So I spent a bit of time, I guess last week, to write a long article that started a bit of debate with different people. So I was thinking, okay, let's talk about it more deeply, even if very far at different time zone where we are. And I know you spent your whole career in something around moving data very fast through networks. Tell me a bit how you started getting involved with this.
Well, I actually started as a researcher doing research for telcos in Australia, Telstra, one of them. So I was at academic research at a university.
Oh, wow.
We're doing multicast, we're doing real-time CDNs. Really, this was back in 2000 and super interesting time. Very hard to actually get good scalable streams out there and working. It was very interesting time.
Yeah, I can imagine also the network were a bit different.
Oh, yeah, that's right. So I originally started in academia doing a thing called ATM, which is such an old technology these days. So I moved on to that.
No idea.
We
no idea what it is, but
so we started doing things around streaming media, and also we did work on computer games. So we did voice communication of massively multiplayer computer games, so massive systems, which was a lot of fun.
And from there, how you ended up in Dolby at some point?
Yeah, that's right. So around the game project that we were doing, I started a company with a couple of my PhD students, and then Dolby bought that back in 2007. So I've been in Dolby since then, and we've been doing network media experiences.
And as we saw, and I started streaming, working in streaming 2007, 2008, with NBC Olympics for the Beijing Games, originally using, I think the first thing I saw with adaptive bitrate and everything that is what modern streaming is based on was from a company, Move Networks from Canada. Then, incredibly enough, Microsoft Silverlight was the first one that NBC used. So I remember those ages where we were surprised we could go back in video, etc. But obviously the latency was quite high. And again, latency is only a portion of the experience, right? So I think we all care about the experience. But help me define latency, low latency in 2025. What are what do you call it, layers or the use cases? How you define it on your side?
So I'll start with the lowest latency, which we call ultra low latency, and that to us is sub-second. Then we look at very low latency, which is around about the sub 3 seconds, sub 5 seconds, sub 3 seconds, depending on what the customer needs is. And then the low latency is to us is sub 7 seconds, sub 5 seconds. It's the definitions people have different ones for these different stages.
And what are the use cases? Because there have been certain niche companies pushing the low latency, and very often it was more a vendor push than a client pull, whatever you want to define the relationship there. No, what's your view in terms of real use cases again in 2025? And
so ultra low, they're pretty straightforward use cases. So you've got experiences like auctions is a great example. And so we have auctions customers, and they want high quality with very low latency, depending on, some of them sell very expensive objects, even houses. So that's an easy use case to understand. Then there is the sports betting use cases. They're becoming increasingly important with in-play betting, where people can bet during the game, and that the lower delay, the better for consumers. And there's other use cases like iGaming, etc. There's very defined use cases for that, sub-second case.
And what about the broader sports media? cases. I think we all know the story of the World Cup final, and your neighbor is on a different distribution network, which these days is almost obvious they will be on some other whatever, because there are so many cases there. Even the same provider of sport content will have different platforms. So what is realistic, and what are your clients asking? Because one of the questions that we often have is, what are the clients really asking? Because that seems to be the question. What is the business case behind this technology?
Well, there's a number of there's current business cases, there's emerging business cases. The current business case around low delay for the sports use case is really, outside of sports betting, is really around enabling people to watch together without getting spoilers from social media. That's a big thing at the moment. So if you have a stream which is 20 seconds from the live game, 20 seconds plus from the live game, 10 seconds plus from the live game, you're going to most likely get a spoiler of a goal or what's happening in the game before you see it. So a lot of people have a dilemma. Do I put my phone on silent, put it over there, or to watch the game? And trying to get younger generations to put their phone away. Even myself, I can't put my phone away while I'm watching a live game. It's a very important use case. And one thing that's important to note here is, because you want to get the delay down so that you don't get spoilers, it's not about the lowest latency or the average latency. It's about keeping everyone at that low latency. And you want to be 10 seconds from live with a stream so that you don't get those spoilers. But then you've got the production latencies and the delays because of profanity filters that are there already. So after you've got your 7 seconds of production delay, you don't have a lot of delivery latency left to send the stream to the consumer, so they don't get a spoiler from someone that's at the game.
Yeah, absolutely. And on the other end, you also want more and more, and especially for sport, very good quality streams. So it's not only, so the experience has to be good, apart the technology behind it. I think how do you think the needs of client, meaning the big media groups, the big sport properties, or whoever is asking for this, and we are talking about the more generalistic use of sport video without specific cases like that.
And I think that's a big limitation with low delay streaming at the moment, when you're really trying to get the delay down sub 3 seconds, is doing that at a high quality. And so obviously it's a focus for us as a company, because we're all about high quality experiences. We've started at the low latency, and we're spending a bunch of time getting the quality to be high. And so one thing I noticed in your article, you talked about getting the bit rate up. And I think that's important, to get higher and higher resolution streams to get a better experience. But you also want to get things like the colors right, and you want it to be in high dynamic range. You want to get all of that right first before you start increasing the pixel count.
I always found this discussion about low latency, not from a vendor point of view, but I always have represented streaming in discussion when a lot of the people in the rooms with clients were of broadcast origin. This will be a lot of people that will not like my next segment. But I found very often an excuse of broadcast people to fight streaming, to say, but it's 20 seconds, 30 seconds. And I always found like a petty excuse. I say, okay, but streaming, we can do a lot of stuff with it. We can have different, so there are a lot of things you can do with streaming on digital devices, right? That you cannot do on broadcast. But then the other day there was this, and I'm not mentioning because an Italian won, but Wimbledon final, tennis. I'm on the beach. My son wants to watch. He's 10 years old. And then we get in the car and he's watching. And we arrive to the fourth set, last serve from Yannick Sinner. And we're all there waiting. And it's an ace. And, he won Wimbledon with Alcaraz, amazing moment. And then it's like, 30 seconds after, my son says, I have to tell you something. So, okay, You want to play tennis, whatever. It's a football player. And he said, yeah, I knew he won before because there was an alert on the mobile phone, Dad, that told me that Sinner won. But I didn't want to ruin it for the family. So I didn't tell you, but I knew it before. And I say, okay, this guy has not been educated for low latency on the discussion. So that was a real anecdote that happened like 3 days ago. So it's still a case. It's not a petty excuse of saying, so bringing down latency in 2025 may be like a sanity check for every, video experience. And how does it impact the fact that maybe the same provider will have, obviously, I don't know, I remember doing 14 different platforms for clients. How does it work when you start to have a lot of platforms? And I guess today, but you know more than I do now, will be big screen platform, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah, and I think one of the problems in the space is trying to get low latency across a wide variety of platforms. And so that being able to deal with this wide variety of platforms is a really crucial part of the problem. That's one of the big reasons why we recently made the acquisition of TheoPlayer about a year ago, so a little bit, not quite recently, but that's the key reason that we bought TheoPlayer. They had other streaming technologies, which we can talk about later because they're pretty cool, but we had to have a reliable player that large sports organizations would be comfortable deploying across all of their platforms. And we wanted a team that could actually deal with all of the platform problems and help us get a great experience across all the platforms. It's an important point.
Because I think the moment you go to big screen, there are, I think, different issues. One, the technology is different per platform. Not all technology on the device is at the same level, but also the rate of change. So you don't buy. I don't know if now everybody's buying a phone every year, but because now they're more expensive than laptops and everything. But TVs normally last a lot more for whatever reason. Now they're cheaper than phones, but we don't change them. Luckily enough, because it's not a good thing for the environment. So I think that's the real complexity. Or what is your experience there in terms of big screen impact in this ecosystem?
Yeah, and we deal a lot with older versions of, I won't name the platform, but there's particular versions of very, very common televisions that are quite problematic. And so customers that want the wide deployment generally come to us because of those problematic platforms. We actually focus on making sure we support them. But it's not just these older problematic platforms that make it difficult to create great over-the-top streaming experience across TVs. Because many TVs, you're limited to one decode. So you can only run one stream. And so that kind of limits the kind of cool things that you can do for fan engagement experiences going forward. But dealing with those and still creating great fan engagement experiences is pretty important.
And then also, I think there are certain sports, because very often the quality of experience also depends a bit on the sport. I remember I was working for a long time with the NFL, right? And I was playing with Watch with Red Zone and things on the same device. But I understand, obviously, if you're using different devices, like, I don't know, your phone, and the fact that you try to, maybe if not reach complete sync, being as close as you can to the screen, really change the experience if you're using, and I don't know how many people are familiar with NFL, Red Zone, etc., but I think you have a good example there, right?
Yeah, so that we've worked with customers in the past that want to build experiences where you have a big screen experience and a second screen experience. And with those, you can work on synchronizing the latency. And we have got approaches where you can actually determine the latency that you want. So you can get them pretty well in sync. But in general, those synchronized small screen, large screen experiences are pretty rare. And the kind of problems people have is, say you're watching a game and you're watching Red Zone at the same time. And if they're way out of sync, it's not a great experience. We know a lot of people watch Red Zone on their mobile phone while they're watching other games. And that's a problem, because you'd have to start synchronizing across different platforms, which is difficult. And that's one of the drivers we see for people getting down to the lower latencies, because they don't want to be the one that's 10 seconds delayed while someone's watching some other platform. So it's not just social media, it's other platforms. There's a bit of a competition between them, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And without going into too much complexity, can we talk about the technology behind it? So my idea is, if we can get the people listening to this until this point, get out of this video podcast and remember a bit, okay, that technology is more for ULL, ultra low latency. But it has a lot of complexity. And as we go through, maybe also talking about scale, what is the reasonable scale you can reach today with the technology of today with this kind of
obviously this is a topic that I'm very comfortable with. I've been in the streaming technology space for a long time. So that with sub-second, there's really two technologies that are common in that space. So there's what's called WebRTC, which I'll talk about more in a second. Plus there's media over quick. So WebRTC is the thing now. Media over quick is coming. And the reason why they're both sub-second is they're based upon an underlying network approach called UDP, so unreliable networking. And so you can get the delay consistently below a second because you can control when it retransmits. And so these are the two technologies that will enable the sub-second.
Because just my ex-CTO hat, which I lost some years ago, there's obviously different components. Just to explain it, there is what we call it the streaming origin. There is a networking behind with CDN or whatever, and there's a device with a player on it. Correct, more or less.
Yeah.
Just I don't want to oversimplify, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
You need the whatever 3 or more components to work together. Otherwise, it's correct.
That's right. And so
you can control a bit. You cannot control very often it's difficult to control everything. You don't own the CDN, that's also the complexity. So you have to use technology that works well on whatever highways there are available, more or less, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And that's why WebRTC, I'm kind of keen to go a little bit further into WebRTC, because all WebRTC really defines is the playback experience in the browser and on native devices. And so WebRTC is a playback technology, and they've made certain assumptions on the jitter buffer which influence quality. But building a streaming service on WebRTC, you have to build the origin and the distribution component of it. And that distribution component is very much like multicast from 20 years ago. It's an overlay multicast network that basically takes a packet, copies it, and sends it to multiple nodes and creates a fan out so that you can get to the right scale. With media over quick, it's very much the same. So it's defining a playback experience, but media over quick go a little bit further and define that overlay network of packet copy and forward, copy and forward of the packet. So they define that, and they're media over quick relays. So
is it available today or not yet?
It's still in late stages of definition. So the way to do it at the moment is with WebRTC and creating your own fan out network and your own origin. So we've done that within our product, but in the future we are likely to use media over quick and media over quick relays as well. To us, it's the user experience, not the technology, that's important.
Yeah, and to keep the latency consistent with this technology, is it guaranteed or is part of the game?
So it's not guaranteed. With everything here, you actually have to do work to try and get consistent latency. With WebRTC, the defined latency with WebRTC, or the defined behavior, is very much around real-time communications. So we do things in the playback buffer size to increase the delay a bit so that you have more of a streaming experience as opposed to a real-time communication experience. So, and then again, so WebRTC, we're improving on top of that. And with Media Over Quick, we get some of those things will be more standardized in the future. But then again, you've got to do all of this right. You've got to build out your relay network correct. You've got to configure your players correct. You've got to build the origin in a way where you create high quality streaming experiences. So we're about that experience, not the actual technology, if that makes sense.
And with this technology, what is the reasonable scale that you have experienced? And and also, is there a use case for like bigger scale? Maybe the reason. So I don't know.
So for us, the kind of scale we get to with customers, we can support quite large scale with our ultra low streaming solution, 250,000 plus. However, you rarely see something above 100,000 because they're particular events. It's an event, it's an auction, it's a sports betting event. It's particular events, and you don't get the same scale. You don't need the same scale as you have with broadcast consumer streaming.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. And so when we go further up in the scale, the under 3-5 seconds, the low latency, what is the technology there?
So to us at the moment, 3 seconds is a sweet point. We have customers that want to get reliably sub 3 second. And this is more in the sports use case. And really what you have to do there is you've got to use all of the technologies that everyone's using in low latency, HLS, et cetera, to get the delay down. But you need to also put more work into getting the delay consistently down below 3 seconds. Because if you have 95% of your audience below 3 seconds, and then you have 5% at the 10 plus seconds, they complain a lot because they're the ones who will get a spoiled experience. So we're putting a lot of effort into that consistent low latency. And there you have to do things like enable fast switching. Being able to switch.
I don't know what they do. Explain.
Being able to switch to a lower bit rate on a video frame basis. So being able to really quickly switch to a lower bit rate enables you to manage the playback buffer, which is the real thing that causes latency in a streaming experience.
Yeah. And so, and what kind of scale are we talking about in this case?
When you do with this technology, because basically the technology we call HESP, or a protocol we call HESP, with that technology it scales the same as a standard CDN streaming service. So we're scaling over existing CDN, so there's no penalty in terms of scale for that sort of approach.
So we're talking millions in this case.
Yeah, that's right, millions.
And do you have one thing, because I remember I was working with a company that was a bit inside the CDN space at some point. Can you use any CDN, or are you doing something specific for certain CDN? So how is it difficult to work with different CDN?
We can use most CDNs. There's a couple of specific requirements around how we do this fast switching between the bitrate layers. So not every CDN we support at the moment, or support our streaming protocol. I'd like to, when we're talking about technology, I'd like to go the next step. So we're talking about scale, and one thing that we are we actually have at the moment, and we're working on further improving. We have one streaming service that switches between the required technologies to meet the customer use case. So I think that's something that's really. So if a customer needs a streaming service that is sub 1 second, they integrate our streaming product. But then if some of their customers you don't need to be sub-second, same integration, that just the end user gets a higher delay. And so our streaming solution, we've got a streaming solution that enables our customers to do one integration and then pick the latency.
So it's adaptive latency in the sense of I don't need adapt. So the solution you have adapts to the latency you need per use case.
That's right.
What you were saying before, adapting the speed.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay, in that sense, yeah, makes sense. Yeah, especially if you're serving different use cases under the same umbrella. Obviously, you don't want to integrate to different players.
That's right. So if you've got someone watching a sports event, majority of people may want to be sub 3 seconds because they're watching it socially. But if someone's betting on it, they might want below a second. And so the one streaming service supporting both is important. So what we're trying to do is just abstract the technology from the customer use case. And in fact, the only way to be able to get someone to be sub 3 second might mean switching to the UDP technology that I talked about before.
Yeah.
So that if we just can't deliver the delay we need because of network issues over a CDN, we could switch technology and reuse the appropriate technology to achieve the latency required.
And so is there also a component of quality of service? How do you prove that you're really doing it? Because, okay, I can be, it's a typical, sorry, I don't want to, I've always been a vendor, so I have a specific perspective. So the client CEO is at home with the family, and he's saying, oh, it was amazing. Oh, no, it was buffering. So that's either wonderful or not so wonderful. But obviously, you need analytics. You need to, I don't know, how you do that. What is the standard in this industry to demonstrate? Are you using, what the Conviva, the YAMPO, or you're also providing something on your side? That was always a debate also when I was building this kind of things.
This is one of the big reasons with the TheoPlayer acquisition, because everyone's got their favorite analytics platform. And
yes,
our biggest customers, if you want to win large customers, they someone might want to use Conviva, someone might want to use NPOR, and so just the choice of whatever analytics platform they want to use. We have a sort of a plug-in approach for that, so that you can just choose the analytics of that you really want. And so then they're not trusting us for their analytics.
No, exactly. There are fun bases, I think, in video analytics, depending on, and tech teams may have one or the other. Had a lot of discussion on that. So it makes sense to have someone external to do that.
We also have our own analytics so our customers can support our product as well. So there's a lot of you need to do both. So something to enable, so custom analytics for us, so people can support our product, so support their services on our product, but then whatever analytics platform they need.
Okay, I need to ask this question because otherwise people will say, oh, you didn't ask that. On the other hand, if I ask, I'm embarrassed to ask, but whatever. I'm a guy with a scarf, I can ask whatever I want. What is the impact in the future or now of AI in this kind of technology, if there's any? I can imagine it's difficult to say there is none.
Yeah, so there's obvious things around AI, video codecs, etc. But to me, the biggest impact I think AI is going to make in this space is around fan engagement. And what's exciting me about sports experiences going forward is being able to create a sports experience that keeps someone engaged and watching a live game. So, like, your younger generations aren't that used to, or not that inclined to watch long-form content and sit and watch a whole game. So a couple of ways to fix that is make games shorter, and I think there's a lot of work there going, which the pitch clock in baseball, etc. But there's a lot we can do from the streaming side to make it more interesting. So being able to bring in data to engage users as they're watching. And what I like here is predictive data. So, with NFL, for example, I like what Thursday Night Football is doing with their advanced analytics, where they highlight players that are likely to be involved in the next play. And that engages some viewers. And so there's AI tech involved there, obviously. But I think there's more work to do to really work out how to engage viewers. And I think that's the space where there's going to be a lot of advancement over the next few years to make sports more and more engaging and bring on new generations of viewers.
But one thing that I always contrast is it may be true. There are some debate about the young generation, and again, it's not only age, it's also experience. I mean, I consider myself a native digital, even if definitely I started working before the internet, so imagine how old I am. But on the other end, these, especially if they are gamers, they spend hours in long form experiences, right? So I think that nobody has cracked the code, but I agree there are certain experiences that are starting to become adopted widely, because if it's only like 1% of your user, maybe it's a great thing you're doing for your sponsor, for your team, but it doesn't change the game completely. You need to bring something that is adopted by 10, 15, 20% of people. Like we saw when we introduced the data overlays, etc. in Champions League, for example, that at the beginning of the season 5% were using what's called the advanced player. At the end of the season it was 90. So it's very, you need the client to work with you. So case with like the NFL, or you need certain type of sport properties or media groups, or the combination, to really, because we can work on a lot of this technology, but we need our clients to be convinced, push it, their marketing should support it, etc. So I don't know if you also see that, but it's a long path to adoption, I would say.
Yeah, and I think there's lots of people trying different fan engagement experiences, and it's a long process of trying it out, building something, trying it out, seeing if it works. And I think it's less data-driven sort of approach at the moment. It's just trying things, and I think that's where AI can come in and help as well. If we can bring data, if we can use data to solve the problem and engage, work out how to engage viewers, that's an interesting approach.
Okay, so I hope we didn't go too deep into technology, but I really enjoy our conversation, and it brought me back to want to do more product stuff and less guy with a scarf stuff, and go back into some complex project like I did for the last 15 years.
Well, thanks, Carlo. I really enjoyed the conversation.
And I'll be at the IBC. I don't know if you're coming this side of the ocean in September.
Certainly, can't miss IBC.
Okay,
I really like IBC.
we'll see ourselves and a lot of other people involved in our industry in Amsterdam in September. Thank you, Paul. Ciao.
Thanks, Carlo.